it's important to make sure that we understand that your metabolism is not broken. It's doing exactly what it should be doing.
Yeah.
You are sending your body signals and your body is listening, and it's making the changes that are in accordance with the signals that you're sending to your body.
Welcome to the Men's Alliance podcast. Men's Alliance is a growing movement of tribes across the nation that meet weekly for rugged outdoor workouts and a real-world devotion around a fire. If you want to be a part of what we're doing, join us at men'salliancetribe.com, where you can find a tribe near you or come to one of our Start the Fire weekends. So check us out at men'salliancetribe.com. Now stay tuned for this great podcast.
Welcome to the Men's Alliance podcast. I'm Dave Mills Goose, and with me today is Nick Hawkins, call sign Coach.
Yep.
Coach, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here, buddy.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
So today we are going to be talking about nutrition, fitness, health, all that stuff, kind of the physical component, which is kind of surprising that we haven't done more of this. As much as we work out the same amount as we have devotions, it's a 50-50 split. So it's good that we're doing this. We should definitely do more of this. And, I know that you're very passionate about both nutrition and fitness, and kick us off here with why this is important, why we need to care about this as men.
Yeah. I was really inspired by joining Men's Alliance just from the pure aspect of, like you mentioned, 50% of it is a workout. So I was pretty much bought in from the beginning, right? Like, you didn't have to convince me to do that. So as I got more integrated into Men's Alliance and got more serious about it, started coming more often, I got more and more questions about the fitness side, but honestly, a little bit more of the nutrition side, right? A lot of the guys that show up there, they like fitness. Not everybody loves the nutrition component, right? They know it's important,
Right.
but not everybody likes it. So
we got a lot of dudes that love to work out and love to eat.
Yeah, definitely.
That's me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everybody loves to eat, right? And not saying you can, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but why it's important in general, I think everyone knows it's important. I think everybody knows that I should be taking care of my body, and there's not a lack of messaging out there around fitness. There's gyms on every corner. There's different ads for nutritionists and weight loss programs and whatever the case may be. There's tons of that out there. I think where most people stumble is how, or maybe even the what, right? Is how do I actually make this happen? How do I make it stick? How do I make it work for me and my schedule and my family? And I think that's where a lot of people stumble and don't really understand it. So hopefully we can kind of dive into that and give some people value there. I think as men, being able to lead your family, like we talk all the time about being able to lead spiritually in the home. I think if you're not able to show up each day physically capable to do your job and all the other things that come along with being a man, a father, husband, a lot of it starts with your physical body first. So I think, taking care of that, showing up with your best effort there will only bleed positive things into every other aspect.
Yeah. I'll just say this too. If you're watching this podcast and you're not like in a Men's Alliance tribe, most of our Men's Alliance dudes, speaking for my tribes, the ones I go to, don't really look like you. How old are you?
I'm 23.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I thought you were older than that. So, the majority of us are about 45 is about the median age. We're most of us are 45 and probably a good, 10 to 20 pounds overweight. We got some love handles, but we love to work out. We love to get out there and get after it. But when I first started Men's Alliance, I thought that it was going to attract primarily guys like you. So when I started, I was 37 and I was in the Air Force. and in pretty good shape. Not I was a little past my best shape, but I was still pretty good. Now I'm just way past it. But I really thought it was going to be a bunch of young CrossFit dudes that came to Men's Alliance, and that really was not the case. Right off the bat, guys in their mid to late 50s, even early 60s were coming out, and it was surprising me. And most of the guys that looked like you that I would invite on Sundays at church, be like, hey, you got to come out and check out this group. Most of them didn't come out at all, or if they came out like one time. So that's really surprising over the course of, we've been doing this 7 years now, and just seeing like the demographic of Men's Alliance. It's mostly, I'm even getting kind of on the young end. We got guys now in tribes that are in their 70s.
Yeah.
We got a lot of guys in their 70s. And I love that we've also got a lot of guys with some physical disabilities.
Yeah.
So we got guys coming out on crutches. We got a guy with one leg. We've got a guy, who's partially paralyzed from a car wreck. And like I said, a bunch of guys in their 70s coming after it. So we got this really diverse group, of which, you're kind of the minority. 23 is like super young out there, which I'm really glad that you're there.
Yeah.
And you're involved. Keeps it from being an old guys club.
Well, I think sorry to cut you off, but I think that's such a good thing, because it further drives home the point that this is important for everyone.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think a lot of people sometimes get the feeling of, I'm too far past that, or I'm not in shape, so I don't belong at a place that has a workout or whatever. And again, I think one of the beautiful things about Men's Alliance and is people can show up with any sort of ability and still fit in and still feel like, hey, I may not be the 23-year-old guy who's, running laps around the church or whatever, but like I'm chipping away at something.
That's right.
And I think that's the important part, and that's the important message is it doesn't matter. It's a spectrum, right? It doesn't matter what side of you're on, as long as your one foot is going in front of the other, you're winning.
That's right. I think as long as you're doing something.
Yep.
Right. It's like wherever your ability is, you got to just keep doing it. You got to keep, fighting against the old man. Right. One of our guys says, "Don't let the old man in."
Yep.
Right. And that's a good way to think about it. So, and also there's the multi-generational aspect of it that makes it powerful. I think one of the things I love about Men's Alliance is when we're sitting around the fire, it's guys, teenagers, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And so we're not a, homogenous group of young, fit guys. We've got everything in age. We've also got everything in fitness levels across that spectrum. Like you said. So, all right, we know your age. Tell us more about your background. How did you get into this? And I know you were in the Army.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about all that got you to where you are today.
Yeah. I mean, I'll try to make it as concise of a story as I can without leaving out any important details. So I think I'll start off by saying no one gets into fitness because they love the way that they look. No one does. Right. And at least in my experience. And that was definitely true for me. And, depending on who I was around, it kind of depended on what comments I got. I played football in high school when I was a bigger kid. I played center. So I was on the offensive line. I was probably about 50 pounds heavier than I am right now at my heaviest when I was in high school. And I mean, I was strong. I was working out and that sort of thing, but definitely didn't look like an athlete, I'll say. So as sports progressed, as my adolescence progressed, and I got to the point where I was leaving high school, I got a lot of comments about my size and my weight, and it turned into, unfortunately, a negative motivation for why I wanted to get in shape. It was out of pure hatred for the way that I looked. And I took some pretty negative routes to try to, what I thought, fix that. lots of days skipping meals, just trying to eat as little as I possibly could. Anything to get the scale to drop was all I cared about.
Mhm.
And looking back on it now, it makes me sad because I was 18.
Yeah.
No 18-year-old should be going through something like that. And a lot of people didn't know that that's what I was going through. A lot of people were congratulating me on losing weight. You look great, man. Keep up the good work. And little did they know that behind closed doors, it was a lot of restrictive eating. Like I started to develop a lot of fear of certain foods, things like that. So I lost probably about 30 to 40 pounds in about 3 months, which is pretty
Yeah.
fast, especially for someone my age at that point. So time went by. I started working out a little bit more. I initially lost weight only by reducing the amount that I was eating. And
Were you starving yourself?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would skip breakfast. I would eat. I didn't know anything about nutrition at that point. So I would eat, a package of crackers for lunch and then maybe whatever my mom cooked for dinner. And it was maybe, 1.5 meals per day. And I thought I was doing the right thing because the scale was going down. I was getting that dopamine hit of the number going down. So I
Yeah.
kept wanting to do that. Looking back now, it's, now knowing what I know now, it's it's pretty terrible. But anyways, time went on. I started to get more into working out. I wanted to actually not only lose weight but build muscle and actually look strong and look capable and look
Healthy.
athletic, look healthy.
Yeah.
Exactly. My parents were a little concerned because they knew the amount that I was eating and they saw the rapid weight loss. So they, weren't in love with it, but they weren't overbearing. Anyways, started lifting, started getting strong. Through that process, got really obsessive about exercise and was working out way too much, probably over 12 to 15 hours per week dedicated only to exercise, which is
That's a lot.
insane. And my job was at a gym, so I was teaching classes. My job was fitness. I worked out myself. My entire world was fitness and nutrition. And I developed a really, really, really bad binge eating disorder. And it was just terrible. The more that I got,
what does that mean? What does that look like?
So basically what it would look like is I was so obsessive about tracking every morsel of food that went into my mouth, and I would track everything, and I would be obsessive about hitting a certain number of calories or certain number of protein, certain number of whatever else, to the point where if I went 1 or 2 numbers over, right? If my daily intake was 3,000 calories and I went to 3,100, oh, it was over. I broke that one rule. All bets are off, right? And I would just eat, because it was like I'm restricting myself here and I'm telling myself no, 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 no. So then if I break that one rule one time, it's like, oh well, one rule's already been broken, might as well break them all. So I just, would basically just like gorge myself, and then the next day it would go back right to super restrictive stuff. So obviously terrible relationship with food.
That's very similar to addictive thinking. Right.
Very
That
much
sounds
so.
very much like
It's binge drinking.
I've talked to a lot
whatever
of
it is.
addicts that say, the same thing. It's like, well, once I mess up, I might as well mess up big.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's an all or nothing mindset around food, which is probably one of the worst mindsets you can have. So anyways, as time progressed, I learned a lot more, educated myself on what I was doing wrong, what I was doing right, and really just dove in big time to trying to understand. I got my testosterone checked because I just wasn't feeling good. And, or I got a lot of different things checked, but one of them was testosterone, and my testosterone was 84 nanograms per deciliter, which for those of you who don't know is worse than most 90-year-old men. And I was 21.
Yeah, shouldn't it be like 700?
Yeah, it should be. So for someone my age, it should be probably between 700 and 900, and I was at an 84.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of this was
why was that?
Yeah. So a lot of this was caused by several different factors. One was the binge eating, for sure. That's an insanely big stress on the body, is going through, basically eating 5,000 to 6,000 calories in a 1 hour window is insanely stressful on your body.
Okay.
The amount that I was exercising is also insanely stressful on my body. When I was sticking to my restrictive diet that I was on, it was lacking a lot of nutrients, and all I was concerned about was low calorie, high protein, whatever. Like that's all I cared about. And in that process, you miss a lot of important nutrients. So that's a big stress on the body. So basically, wasn't sleeping effectively, right? So it just compounds all of these things that are very stressful to your body. And that stress is going to radically change your hormonal profile no matter how old you are. And so doing that enough times, it tanks my testosterone. And yeah, and I felt like crap. So that was a very eye-opening moment for me. I also went through a pretty bad back injury around the same time. So it forced me to change the way that and the amount that I worked out. So that was one. The testosterone thing was another big slap in the face.
Dealing with injury is huge, and that derails our workouts.
Yeah.
It also, like, when I get injured or sick, and if I can't work out because I'm sick, man, I start getting depressed.
Yeah.
Because now I'm not doing the thing
Yeah.
that keeps me going.
I mean, I definitely was depressed, and looking back, it was a blessing in disguise. Definitely God slowed me down a little bit there, which I needed to be. But I definitely went through a depressive period where my identity was wrapped up in my workout. My identity was wrapped up in looking a certain way, being a certain body fat percentage. That's where my identity was. And as I started to lose that, I absolutely slipped into depression and got, man, I'm losing this. So it forced me to rearrange that part of my life. It forced me to work out a different way that supported my body and worked for me, not against me. And it forced me to look into and dive more into eating a certain way that's going to make me healthy. And I was really focused on getting that testosterone number up. And by the grace of God, completely naturally, I've been able to get it up. The last time I got it checked was a year ago, so I need to get it checked again. But last April, it was at 529. So
awesome. Moving in the right direction.
Yeah, moving in the right direction. So yeah, but again, that just goes to show that more is not always better. Sometimes less is more. And what I'm shooting for now and what I try to tell people is, especially with the fitness side of things, is what you're shooting for is the minimum effective dose. Do the least amount of possible that can elicit the most amount of change.
Okay.
And what that's going to allow you to do is get all the benefits without depleting your body, getting all the negative side effects. There is a level of diminishing returns here, so we just got to be smart about that. So that's kind of where I'm living now. Obviously, through that process, I fell in love with all of it. It was super neat and interesting to me. So I ended up starting my own nutrition and fitness coaching business, which I've worked with over 100 individuals on helping them avoid a lot of the mistakes that I made and finally figure out what's actually going on in their body, why they've tried to lose weight hundreds or each person has tried to lose weight probably at least 4 or 5 times, hasn't worked, hasn't stuck, just helping them figure out why and then helping them figure out a way that actually does stick for them. So that's where we're at now.
So go back a minute. You were in high school,
yeah,
and going through this. What happened after that? Did you go into the Army, or did you go to college, or what'd you do?
So both. So I went to college. I went to a 4-year university for about a semester. It was not my cup of tea, so I ended up leaving. Came back and went to junior college. Got my associate's degree there. I was also working pretty much full time as I was getting my associate's degree. Luckily, this was around the time COVID was happening. So again, a lot of people were off put by COVID. It was in somewhat a blessing to me because, maybe not a blessing, let me not say that, but it worked in my favor because all of my classes were online. So I was able to get a lot done that in college as well as work. And then as soon as I got my associate's degree, that's when I went into the Army.
Okay.
Left for basic as well as AIT, came back, enrolled in Liberty online. By the way, those of you who don't know, Liberty has an amazing degree program for post-military. So anyways, I did that and finished, got my bachelor's degree, and then got out of the Army in January. So it was probably 4 or 5 different things going on at the same time. I was trying to fix my body. I was in the January of 23.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So
just over a year ago.
Yeah. So a lot of things going on, starting a business, in the Army, finishing my degree, a lot of those things happening simultaneously.
So what is your take on intermittent fasting? This is so popular.
How'd I know I was going to be asked this?
Done it. I went through a kick of it. You know, I know we got a lot of tribesmen that are big on it.
Yeah.
Stuff. Is that good for us?
My answer to a lot of questions like this is always going to be, it depends.
Yeah.
And I'm very rarely going to give a yes or no answer to some of these things, again, unless it calls for it. But, intermittent fasting is a tool. It's a tool that you should keep in your tool belt.
Okay.
It may not be something that you want to use all the time, every single day.
Yeah.
Some people, that works for them. The reason that intermittent fasting helps most people lose weight is not because it's magical.
Mm-hmm.
It creates a calorie deficit for most people. Calorie deficit meaning you're eating less calories than you're burning, right? The only way for you to lose weight on the scale is to be in a calorie deficit. Now, like, I have to be careful saying that, because a lot of people go, oh, all I got to do is just eat less. Well, I'm just going to stop eating, right?
Yeah.
Well, learn from me. Don't do that. Or do it with care and with smarts. But again, intermittent fasting works because it's very hard to overeat in a smaller window of time. If you give yourself all day to eat food, right? Like, it's a lot easier to be in a calorie surplus, which means eating more calories than you are burning. So intermittent fasting works because it shrinks that window that you're able to eat in. So now it makes it a lot easier to become in that calorie deficit.
Yeah, it's hard to overeat if you're only going to eat for like 1 hour a day.
Yeah. I mean, there's different ways to do it, right?
Yeah.
There's like the 16-8 method, which is probably the most popular, right? You give yourself an 8-hour window, whether it be 10 to 6 or whatever the case may be.
I hardly even call that. I don't even think of that one as intermittent fasting. I'm like, that's just skipping breakfast.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a fancy name for I skipped breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. And
you've got an 8-hour eating window. You can eat from noon till 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I know it's popular and a lot of people do it, but it is my opinion. I'm like, that's, I'm the kind of person where if I'm going to intermittent fast, it's going to be, like 20 and 4.
Yeah.
Or 23 and 1.
Yeah. I mean, and that's right. Like, if you're going to use fasting, in my opinion, it should be used more so for an emotional, spiritual practice, right?
Yeah.
Using it to get back in touch with God, using it to connect to that part of yourself, not primarily using it as a weight loss tactic.
Yeah.
Now that comes along with it, right? Which is a benefit. But just being smart about it, and again, not overdoing it and using it every day. I know people who fast 1 day a week or whatever the case may be. Go for it. Like, that's great. But again, if you're becoming more like, oh man, I'm obsessed about it and I can't eat until 2 p.m. every day. It's like, well, if you've got a super stressful job, you've got kids, you've got a wife, you've got all these things going on, and your baseline stress level is already kind of high. Adding another stressor, which is a calorie deficit and skipping a meal, both of those are small stressors on the body. Adding more of those may not be a good idea. So you just got to be smart about what you're doing, and again, use it for the right reasons.
I'll tell you, it's very effective for prayer.
Absolutely.
My goodness. I haven't done it many times, but the couple times that I've fasted for prayer, man, my prayer life is just skyrocketed, because there's nothing like feeling hunger pangs to make you pray.
Yeah.
And if you use that as your reminder, like, okay, I'm going to not eat today or for 2 days or 3 days or whatever. And every time I feel hunger, instead of eating, I'm going to pray. Man, you're about to be praying an awful lot, which it's very powerful. I love, the effects of that. And then it's funny, and I've said this before, but like when I did that, I felt like I had discovered something, which is comical because it's in the Bible, right? Like Jesus said, prayer and fasting, and it's like we feel like in 2024 we're just now discovering it,
right?
It's
exactly
very much an ancient, practice that the Bible has been encouraging us to do for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So from that spiritual component, I love it.
Absolutely. And another benefit too, just really quickly, is a lot of times I'll use it with people I'm working with if we need to get back in touch with our hunger cues. And what I mean by that is very few people, at least people who are listening to this podcast, are actually go hungry.
Yeah.
And very few of us have actually felt true hunger. Maybe not ever. And maybe just once in a while, if you do skip a meal, or, maybe a travel day and you skip eating because you're in the airport or whatever, like, you get hungry. But for the most part, we get cravings. And, oh man, like, I ate breakfast and, I normally eat lunch at 12, but it's 1 o'clock, so I'm getting hungry. And sometimes I like to use fasting with people to say, hey, I need you to get back in touch so that you can learn to differentiate between what actual hunger feels like and just having a craving, because those two things are very different. And
I'm really glad you brought this up, because this is something like I've been reading about and learning about over these past just couple of months. I've been learning through some of these practices that like my body's signals that I'm full, stop eating signal that our stomach sends to our brain.
Yep.
I have realized in just these past couple months that certain foods don't send that signal. And it's like something that like I just discovered this.
Yep.
And some foods send that signal very quickly.
Yeah.
So I realized that, like, man, if I sit down with like steak and green beans or chicken and broccoli, it's like I can't eat that much of those things. It's like you eat like one normal size plate of that stuff and your brain gets the signal. Like, I'm full, stop eating. But like if I've got like spaghetti on my plate, or some sort of like baked ziti or something like that, I eat that whole plate and I don't get that signal to my brain. And I guess I thought that it was like, oh, it takes more of this food to make me feel full. But really what's going on is you're full in your stomach, but your brain's not getting that. So I've started realizing that there's these hunger hormones that you just brought up, these hunger hormones, and some foods kind of like mess those up, or they kind of distort your hunger hormones. Tell me more about that.
No, absolutely. So that's a great point to bring up, because I think that's where a lot of people, there's a lot of mixed messages out there, and I'll try to make this as clear as possible. So one of the popular diets or philosophies around nutrition recently has been what's called if it fits your macros, excuse me. And again, I'm not going to, like, if it's worked for some people, that's great. It's not a method that I'm going to use, and I'll tell you why. For a practicality standpoint, for someone who has tried to lose weight before and they're struggling to make it stick, or whatever the case may be, okay, for that person, I'm not going to use a tactic like if it fits your macros, which, by the way, what that means is I'm giving you a certain number of calories each and every day, and inside of those calories you have to eat a certain number of protein, fats, and carbs. As long as you hit those numbers, you're great. It doesn't matter what types of foods you're eating, as long as it fits. You could eat 13 protein bars in a day and you hit your macros. Congratulations, you've succeeded for the day. And again, that's a very exaggerated example, but that's sort of what that methodology teaches, is the types of food that you're eating is less important than just the pure numbers. And again, it might make it easy for some people if they're very analytical, but I'll tell you where the drawbacks are. Is one of the things you just mentioned is there are different foods, and not every food is equal. It might be equal in calories, right? You get an egg that's 70 calories, or you get, a handful of Fruit Loops. They're both 70 calories, but one is going to keep you fuller way longer than the other. And if you're following something like an if it fits your macros, oh, well, Fruit Loops is giving me 70 calories. It fits inside of my day. I'm just going to go for that, right? But what happens over time is it's very hard to stick to a method like that and to be consistent with it, because if you're constantly hungry all day and you never really have that satiety, it's going to be really hard to stick that out for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, right? So when we're talking about what foods work and what foods maybe don't work, is really pay a high attention to the quality of food that you're eating. One of the biggest drawbacks and one of the biggest reasons people fail at this is because a lot of the food that's out there is what I call, or what it is called is ultra processed foods, right? And these are the foods that are literally engineered to and designed to make you overeat. Right? They have engineers in these factories that change the way that the crunch on the chip hits your brain, right? And makes you want to eat another one, right? These foods are not designed to keep you full, because they want you to buy more of them. They want you to eat more, because that means you're going to buy more, and that makes them more money, right? And that's a conversation for another day. But I mean,
They
again,
designed this thing to make you overeat it.
I mean, and again, like, and if we're gonna go down that rabbit hole too, like, you look at a Burger King commercial on television, right? What is happening when this person is eating Burger King? They're smiling.
Yeah.
There's sprinklers and fireworks and all kinds of great things going on in the background, and there's beautiful women in these commercials, right? They're selling you on happiness, and you think that this burger, or whatever, is, so again, like, all I'm saying is these foods are engineered, they are marketed in a way to where you eat them, you're not going to be full on them because they don't have the nutrients and the other things that we've talked about that's going to keep you full, but they're designed to make you eat more and more and more and more of them so that you buy more. So when we're looking at something that's actually going to work, right? Can you have some of those things sometimes? Of course, it's a part of life. You go to your kid's birthday party, you're going to have a slice of cake, like, of course, right? But for the most part, we want to be aiming for single ingredient, whole, unprocessed foods, right? Things that have not been, they come from the earth or they come from an animal, right?
Yeah.
Those are the things that we want to be aiming for, that are going to keep us full, which means that it's going to be easier to stick to long term because we're not going to constantly have these hunger signals that are hitting us that make it hard to stick to, right? We're going to feel better, more energy, right? Our skin's going to clear up, we're going to have less gut issues. All of these things are the benefits from sticking to something or aiming for these whole unprocessed single ingredient foods. So hopefully that provided a little bit of clarity around
that's
what
awesome.
makes those things different.
I remember an ethics class in college learning about how, if you eat too much salty stuff, your brain like gets a signal like that's enough.
Yeah.
And if you eat too much sweet stuff, your brain gets a signal. But like some of these cereal companies, they've put the right mix of both salty and sweet, that both of those signals to your brain cancel out. So your brain never gets the that's enough signal, because the food has the right amount of both sweet and salt.
Yeah.
And I remember learning that. And of course it was an ethics class. So it was within the context of like, is this ethical? Should companies do this?
Yeah.
Engineer a food specifically to keep your brain from ever feeling like it's satiated.
Yeah.
Right. Which is like, crazy. I feel like that's a word that we need to be using more when it comes to nutrition too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, we want to feel satisfied. And when you feel satisfied, it's easy to stop eating because you feel good. But I feel like so many people are on these restrictive diets where, like, even if, like you're saying, like even if you're winning with your numbers, you feel miserable, and you're a miserable person to be around because you're never happy. And I think there's certain foods, and maybe you can tell us more about this, but I feel like there's certain foods that both hit the numbers, hit the macros, but they also make you feel full and happy, on something that's like you said, it's either from the earth or from an animal.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, and why so many people can't seem to stick to things, or it just doesn't work for them, or I've lost 20 pounds and I've gained 30, and then I lost 10 and I gained 10. It's like this constant back and forth, is because when people think about losing weight or getting in shape, what do they think about? They think about the restrictive diets, or they think about, oh, I need to eat salads every day, or I need to eat, whatever, or maybe I just need to eat less. So I'm still going to go through the Hardee's drive-through at the first thing in the morning, but I'm just going to skip lunch, and that's going to help me lose weight. And again, it might help you lose that first 10, but is this going to be something that we can actually stick to in 6 months, in a year from now, right? The thing that you use to get you to lose weight at first should be the thing that you're going to use to help you keep it off.
So it's got to be sustainable.
You should not be like, okay, and I hear this all the time, and I just like, oh man, kind of put my hands on my head and wish that maybe I could step in, but I hear this all the time, like, oh, I'm just going to get the first 20 off and then I'll figure it out. Or I'm only going to use this diet to help me lose 20 pounds and then I'll figure it out from there. Well, what does figuring it out mean? For most people, it means I'm just going to go back to what I was doing before, and then that's where the weight gain comes back after that. And what people also don't realize is every single time that you go through a process of losing weight, gaining it, losing weight and gaining it, you are making yourself metabolically worse off every single time.
I think that's where I am. Like, I've done so many radical things, And I've heard this from
Yeah.
a friend who's a nutritionist. Like every time you do that, you mess up your metabolism.
Mm.
And so I think that's where I've gotten myself is like last year, I hired a trainer and they were giving me macros to hit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and workouts to do. And like it just wasn't working. And they kept tweaking it and kept tweaking it. And so finally, after a couple months into this process, I went and I got myself tested for my resting metabolic rate.
Yeah.
I got my RMR tested and it was 1,700, right? Which for a guy my size,
Yeah, it's a little low.
you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, my
Yeah.
metabolism was so bad.
Yeah. Well, the easiest way to
Great for survival.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point you bring up too, right? Is because, you know, our bodies never got the software update that there's food everywhere, right? Our bodies never
Right.
got that
Yeah.
update, right? So, your body will literally make changes. Your body's prioritizes survival and reproduction.
Mm.
That's what your body is prioritizing right now, right? So every time that you create an environment that is not suited for survival, well, reproduction is first and then survival is second, right? So every time you create an environment that's not suited for any of those things, it's going to literally make changes hormonally, metabolically to keep you alive. So if you go through a diet that's super low in calories, your body is going to start changing the amount of calories that you burn on a daily basis to match the intake level.
Right.
So
So this dude's not eating. We need to slow him down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you will notice if you drop your calories and you start eating less, you will tap your foot less. You will want to get up and go on a walk less. You're less motivated to burn calories. Anything that's going to require energy, you're less motivated to do. And your resting metabolic your resting metabolic rate will then also drop. So if you're someone and you're like, man, I don't even know where to begin with all of this, the easiest way to figure out how many calories is my body burning on an everyday basis, I would say track your calories for 2 weeks, 14 days, track everything you eat, right? That includes sauces, liquid calories, drinks, alcohol, all those things. Track it. If after 14 weeks you are the exact same weight on the scale, whatever average amount of calories you eat, that's how many calories your body is burning in a day. If you are gaining weight after those 14 days, then you're eating above your maintenance level.
Yeah.
If you're losing weight, then whatever number you were hitting, whatever calories you were eating, you are now below your maintenance level. So that'll give you some indication.
That's a good idea.
You know, it's
Take your
it's an equation, right? Yeah,
over all those 14 days.
exactly. Yep.
You mentioned something earlier I want to kind of go back to. You talking about when you were talking about testosterone and like restricting yourself to like one meal a day. So you're taking in like, you know, like if you took in 3,000 calories in one meal of a day, you were saying like that puts stress on the body. And so if I heard you right, I think you were saying that stress reduces your testosterone.
Yeah. So let me.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll give you some clarity around that. So the word metabolism is sort of this umbrella word, and basically it's a relationship between stress and energy. Energy meaning the amount of calories that you burn and the amount of calories that you take in, right? So stress, it's like a seesaw. Okay. So if the amount of stress that you have on your body goes up, the amount of calories that you're putting out will go down. So
the amount of stress goes up, the amount of calories
you burn
will
go down, even if you don't change anything.
Because your body's like
it's
conserving its energy, conserving its strength,
right?
Like hoarding some calories back.
Yeah, because energy in the form of calories and body fat is an insurance policy to your body. So if your body is thinking, oh man, we're in danger, right? And whatever that stress signal is, it could be, you know, past trauma. It could be the constant yo-yo dieting that we talked about. It could be stress from work, kids, you know, loss of a family member. There's a lot of divorce, a lot of different things that cause a lot of stress in your life. So if a lot of these things are going on, what signal you're sending to your body is we're not safe. And if your body doesn't feel safe,
right,
it's not going to allow you to get rid of all this energy
that
and all
makes
this insurance
sense.
policy, right?
Yeah.
And again, body fat is one of those insurance policies too. So if you're under a lot of stress, your body is not going to get rid of that body fat. That's its insurance policy to stay safe. So anyways, on the testosterone side of things specifically, what will happen, right, is again, with all these stress, all this stress is compounding. Testosterone is a sex hormone, right? So it is geared for reproduction,
Mhm.
right? It's like testosterone is literally produced in your testicles. So, so as stress goes up, right? There's a hormone that is called cortisol. Probably heard of cortisol. As stress goes up, more cortisol is produced, and over time, the more times you're sending that cortisol pump to your body, the more times your body thinks, "Oh man, we're not safe. We're in this unsafe environment." And if your body is not safe, it's going to deprioritize reproduction and start prioritizing survival.
So is another way that you can stress your body out to that point where it slows its metabolism done through like ultra endurance events? Does that,
I mean,
like if you're running ultras
yeah.
or Ironmans, does that do the same thing? Like your body goes, holy crap, what is this guy doing to me? I better start saving everything.
Well, if we sort of turn the dial back to maybe a very long time ago, if you were running 50, 75, 100 miles at a time, probably meant you were running away from something.
Right. Yeah.
So that signal to your body is pretty strong that says, "Oh man, this is, like you said, what is this guy doing? We got to get away from this saber-toothed tiger that's chasing us," right? Your body never got the software update that says, "Oh, we do this for fun now," right? There's these races that we put on. So yeah, it's a very loud stress signal to your body. Now, does that mean you shouldn't do it? Absolutely not, right? You absolutely should do it. However, you have to be aware of where are the other stressors in my life coming from, right? Am I going through a tough time with my kids or my wife or my work, or how much stress is on my body right now? And is it a good time to run an ultra marathon?
Right.
Right. And if you're like, you know what, I'm feeling pretty good, my T levels are good, I think I'm a big advocate for just getting that stuff checked on a pretty regular basis just to know where you're at. Okay, I'm good there. My diet is pretty dialed in. And if you know, hey, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to run this thing, I'm going to do this endurance event, right? That means I have to be deliberate about keeping stress in other areas down. I got to make sure that I'm sleeping and I'm recovering well. I got to make sure that my nutrition is on point. I got to make sure that I'm not intentionally causing stress in my life in other areas, because if you do, you might still be able to do that endurance race, right? But to what's going to happen after that,
The first time I ran a marathon was the Lincoln, Nebraska marathon. I think it was like 06 or 07. And I gained like 10 pounds over the course of all the months.
Yeah.
The months of training and completing the marathon. Like I gained weight.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by it. I was like, what the heck is going on? How am I running 18 miles on the weekend and still gaining weight? Well, I wonder if stress had something to do with it.
I would be willing to bet stress was a big component too. And if we're talking, I mean, obviously running a marathon is an insanely daunting cardiovascular ask of your body. You're asking a lot of your body's cardiovascular system. When you train for events like that, what you're doing, and this goes for cardio in general. And I was at a Men's Alliance tribe meeting recently, and there's a guy who I think he was getting his call sign or something, and he in his story he said, "Oh yeah, I'm on a journey to lose weight. I've lost 20 pounds already. This and that." After everything was done, I think somebody asked him, how were you able to lose those 20 pounds? Are you lifting weights? Or he goes, no, only cardio 5 days a week, losing 20 pounds. And just to maybe give some context to folks who maybe think that way, is you should have cardio as a consistent part of your life. It's important, right? Your heart's a muscle. You should work that out too, right? However, on a consistent basis, if you're everything you do is going to send a signal to your body, whether it's stress or what we've already talked about that, but cardio sends a signal to your body that says cardio is important to us. if you're doing it frequently, if you're training for an event, or if you're just a big runner, or whatever the case may be, cardio is going to send a signal to your body that says, hey, being able to keep up with this is important to us. So your body is going to make changes to adapt to the thing that you were telling is important to it. Muscle mass is not important for cardio.
Right.
It is not. If you've seen endurance runners, they're very thin and they don't have a lot of muscle mass because muscle is heavy and it will literally slow you down in your cardio. So your body will actually pare down muscle mass to make you better at cardio, because that's the signal you're sending to your body is, I need to be good at this thing. So what happens is muscle is very good at burning calories. It's very expensive tissue, which means your body has to use a lot of energy to just keep muscle mass on your body. It costs your body a lot of energy, meaning you burn a lot of calories just to keep muscle on your body. So the more muscle you lose through this cardiovascular venture, the less calories you were burning at rest on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah. Muscle keeps burning calories
all day,
even when it's not being
all
used.
Day.
Like you build muscle and you've got something burning calories while you're sleeping because that muscle is eating it up.
And that's why it's the most reliable, sustainable weight loss tactic, is to put muscle mass on your body, because it will burn the calories for you. I always, when I'm talking about, okay, do we use weights or do we use cardio for weight loss? If I'm going to compare this and draw an analogy to maybe making more money, if I want to make more money, I have two routes to go. I can get a job where I'm working more hours. I'm manually putting in the hours to earn more, or I can put my money in an investment account and I can just let it sit there and then grow on its own, where I don't manually
That's a
have
good
to do
analogy. I like that.
So with cardio and with weightlifting, or I should say with like building muscle mass versus maybe not building muscle mass, going out there and burning 400 calories on a run is you manually putting in the hours to burn calories versus going and lifting weights in the gym. Yeah, you might not burn as many calories in that workout.
Gym. Yeah.
But that's like me putting some money away. It's just going to earn more for me throughout the day. Just like if I'm going to build some muscle mass, it's going to burn more for me throughout the day.
I think there's a sustainability part to this too. It's like if you're going to just do cardio to lose your weight, well, now you've got yourself into a position where you have to keep doing that cardio for the rest of your life. As soon as you stop doing all that cardio, you're gaining it right back. Whereas if you can lose the weight by building muscle mass, by lifting weights, that's going to keep it going for you even when you stop, or at least, you know, not as drastic of a.
And the beauty of it too, if we're going to draw this back to nutrition as well, is let's say you do have a weekend where you go out and you have a few drinks, or, you know, maybe you do eat some things that are, you know, not totally in accordance with your goals, right? If you have the muscle mass to support that, it's not a big deal. But if you're if you're only doing cardio and you don't have that muscle mass to support it, it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So, I bet there's probably a lot of guys like me who have broke their metabolism. Like we've done so many crazy things, like different, you know, diet, fasting, you know, keto, all these different things that are really radical, where you eliminate entire food groups, or go all in on doing an ultra, you know, endurance event, all kinds of ways we can hurt our metabolisms. So we broke our metabolism. We're 45 years old. We have an RMR of 1700. Tell us, how do we fix it?
How
do we fix our metabolisms to get back to just where we should be?
What a good question. So first of all, got to be really, it's important to make sure that we understand that your metabolism is not broken. It's doing exactly what it should be doing. You are sending your body signals and your body is listening, and it's making the changes that are in accordance with the signals that you're sending to your body. So I think the first thing we have to do is understand that my metabolism isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it should be. All I have to do is start sending different signals to my body and then my metabolism will follow. Right. So what are these signals that we want to be sending? The first one is stress. It's got to be low. Right. And again, there's certain things that we can't necessarily change about our lives, probably can't change our job immediately. if you're struggling in your
Get rid
marriage,
of all your kids and quit your job.
obviously that's not doable, right? So what are the things that are within our immediate control that are going to take stress off of the body? One is sleep.
Yep.
Sleep is the most potent weight loss and just health drug out there. If sleep could be sold in a bottle, it would be the most expensive supplement on the market. It is
good.
the most powerful thing that you have in your disposal, and you have control over when you go to bed, and you have control over when you wake up. And a lot of people talk about, got to grind and wake up early. And no, how about we go to bed earlier?
Yeah.
How about we start shutting the lights off at 9 o'clock and we get in the bed and, make sure that the lights aren't on late at night, right? And we're starting to wind down, and we get off our phone 30 minutes or an hour before bed, right? We're not eating right before we try to go lay our head down, right? Like, treat your sleep like it is as important as it actually is. So
I remember when I was flying a lot on deployments in the Air Force, they because they mess up your circadian rhythm so much. Like, one day you fly a night mission, the next day they want you to fly a day mission.
Yeah.
And so they would give us sleeping pills to help us change our rhythms. And they had us go through a sleep hygiene class, which at the time was just like a huge eye roll. Like, what the heck? Sleep hygiene class. But now that, like, I've got kids and you see how poorly some people can sleep, that stuff, I'm remembering it all now. I'm like, oh yeah, this was actually important. You're right. Like, don't drink alcohol right before bed. Don't eat right before bed. Make the room crazy dark. Make it cool. Be off screens. All these different things. Like, we can set ourselves up if we do it all right. If you dial it all in, you can really set yourself up for great sleep. But like, I feel like most people are doing it all terrible. They're eating and drinking, lights on their phones, scrolling through Instagram in bed. And then they're wondering why they're not sleeping well.
Imagine if you tried to roll into your day without doing the little checklist of items that you have in the morning, right? Most of us get up, wash your face, take a shower, whatever, brush your teeth, maybe we pray and do a devotion, whatever is going to set yourself up for a good day in the morning. Imagine if you did none of those things and you just went like right out of the gate into your workday or whatever.
Rolled out of bed and walked to the car.
Right. Like, we would feel very scrambled. We would feel very scattered and like, oh man, I didn't get to do my things. Yet, like you mentioned, we expect to just go straight from doing our things to being able to sleep.
That's a great point. We put all this effort and routine into starting
in the morning
our days. We've got to put that same routine and effort into ending the day.
Yeah, exactly. So basically you want to just start finding something that's going to start teaching your body that it's time to go to sleep, right? Whether that's, okay, I want to be asleep at 10 o'clock. Okay, well, that means at 9 o'clock, overhead lights go off. I'm only using lamps, maybe I'm going to throw on some blue light blocking glasses to keep, if I have to be on a screen or whatever the case may be, to make sure that I'm not getting that in my face. Like you said, cutting off eating and drinking, a little, at least an hour or two before bed. Again, starting to teach your body and send the signal. Maybe that's the name of the podcast. Said it enough, but yeah, that's the stuff we want to start doing to tell your body, hey, it's about time for bed. So sleep is absolutely one of the things that we have to pay attention to if we're wanting to get our metabolism back at a really good point. And be successful long term, right? Is doing that. The second thing is something I mentioned earlier with your nutrition. Don't look at it as, what can I do for the next 6 weeks that's going to give me the most amount of results? The mindset going into this has to be, what can I do for the next 25 years?
Yeah, that's good. Think long term.
Because if you're only concerned about the next 6 weeks or maybe even 6 months, right, you're going to do things that are pretty drastic to get there that you can't. Now I want to add an asterisk to that, right? Like, if someone is very overweight and they have a lot of weight to lose, the stress that is on their body from the amount of weight that they're carrying is going to be more than the stress from a deficit or going into a diet like that. So in that case, it is worth going through something that might be a little bit more strict or a little bit more restrictive, because that's going to take away stress from being overweight insulin resistant, whatever the case might be, to bring that down. So that's an important thing to keep in mind too. But for most people who are, maybe just 20 or 25 pounds overweight, looking at it as this long-term thing. And I need to, on day one, I should be able to do the same thing that I'm going to do on day 500. So that's the thing with nutrition. Now, when it comes to fitness, right, we all know that that's important. And if you're a guy and maybe you work out, for 30 minutes at your tribe meeting, and maybe that's all you're doing during the week. First of all, tell yourself that it's okay. Acknowledge what you're doing and say, hey, I'm 30 minutes a week, or maybe I'm not even that on a consistent basis. That's okay. What can I do? Like I mentioned earlier, what is the least amount that I can do that's going to elicit the most amount of change for me? So many of us have it flipped. What's the most amount that I can do?
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week.
Yeah.
No,
you're not.
Exactly. Maybe this week, right?
Yeah.
Maybe as soon as next week comes. Yeah, exactly. So again, looking at it as what's the least that I'm able to commit to? What can I commit to that when I'm having a bad day, I can still get it done?
Mm-hmm.
Because so many of us are like, oh, when I'm having my best day, I can get to the gym and I can do all of this. Well, what about when you wake up, you didn't get a good night of sleep, you're busy at work, you're stressed, your kids are down your neck or whatever. Like, what is the thing that you're still going to be able to do on a day like that? That's what you want to commit to in the beginning. And as you get good at that and you're consistent with it, you've built up a win. So you're feeling kind of good. You're like, man, I've got some momentum here, and you have a desire for more. Oh, I've been doing 2 days, 2 days a week. I've been doing this. I can add a third day. I've gotten really good at hitting 2 days, so I can go ahead and add that third. Or maybe I'm just going to make my workouts longer, or maybe I'm going to make my workouts more intense, or whatever little bit you can add. I would say is where to start, right? Is just what can I commit to on my least motivated day? Mm-hmm. Start there. And then as you get good at that and as you build momentum, you'll naturally want to add a little bit more. So for the sake of not overwhelming everyone, I would say the first thing is your sleep. You have got to dial that in. And then from the nutrition standpoint, again, is looking at what can I do long-term? What can I see myself still sticking to in 2 years, 5 years from now, and starting there. And then again, with the third thing being the fitness, is what can I commit to on my least motivated day and starting there.
Yeah. And I feel like another one down the line from there, 3 or 4 would probably be lift weights. Like get your muscles going to help burn stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, inside of that, like that third thing around fitness is, if whatever that minimum is that you're able to commit to, it has to have a muscle building component to it, even if it's just your body weight, right? A lot of us think we got to go get a gym membership and get under a barbell. You're probably carrying around 200 to 220 pounds.
I'm wearing a weighted vest every day.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. So, you've got a really easy way to start getting into that. And it can be, very simple. It does not have to be complicated. And I think that's, again, where a lot of people mess up is they think that it has to be at level 10 or else they're not going to get any results. And it's just not that. That's not the case.
What would you, first of all, I've been dying to ask you, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
That's actually a really good question. So, I was thinking about bringing this up because it's kind of funny because I was kind of on the go, and I don't typically eat breakfast like as soon as I wake up. I like to kind of get my day going before I actually get into all of that. But this morning I ate on the go. I did go to the gym this morning just because I always feel better when I get a lift in or when I just move my body a little bit. So I went to the gym, and then on the way here, I was like, man, I need to stop for some breakfast. And I actually went into Publix. You're going to think I'm crazy. Everybody's going to be like, this dude's nuts. I went into Publix and I went back into the refrigerator section where the eggs are, and they have bags of hard-boiled eggs that are already cooked. So I grabbed a bag of that. I grabbed a banana, and I walked out, and I had a few hard-boiled eggs and a banana before I walked in here.
That sounds really awesome. And I kind of like hearing the fact that you didn't like cook some gourmet thing that took a lot of time and effort, right?
Yeah.
You didn't make yourself an egg white omelet.
Yeah, no.
You just ran into the grocery store, because that shows that you can still eat healthy
On the go.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, really quickly, just a caveat on the eggs thing. egg yolks have gotten such a bad reputation.
Yeah.
They have gotten, because it's all the cholesterol. You can read multiple studies around dietary cholesterol, and it's very little, if none, impact on your levels of cholesterol in your blood. But anyways, yeah, eating, if you're gonna eating egg whites as opposed to the full egg is like if you had this. One of my friends, a good friend of mine, uses this analogy. It's like if you had this beautiful silver necklace, and there's just this amazing, wonderful, beautiful gold gem right on the center of that necklace.
Mm-hmm.
That's like taking that gold gem off and just chucking it into the ocean and just
Yeah.
sitting there with your silver necklace. There's an egg yolk is like a multivitamin in a shell. Like,
Yeah.
never throw those out.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because it's weird how cholesterol, has gotten this bad
terrible reputation. Yeah.
Yeah, when actually, like, our brain is made of cholesterol.
Yep.
And we need it.
Yeah, cholesterol is the it's actually the tipping point for just hormonal health in general. So if you're not, if your cholesterol is not in a good place, that's going to throw off things downstream. That's another stress on the body.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and again, like dietary cholesterol has much less of an impact on your blood levels of cholesterol than we think. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's good to hear you say, because I've been reading a bunch of stuff saying that, and
Yeah.
that was one of the things I was curious about.
Yeah.
Your take on, especially when it comes to, so egg yolks and then red meat.
Yeah.
And things where I think people swung really far away from a lot of things. And one of the things that was interesting to me was I saw this chart of consumption of red meat in America over like the past, I think it did about 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
The average American's consumption of red meat has been on this massive decline.
Yeah.
Like,
Where's obesity going though?
It's just dropping while obesity is sky, right? They're just, they cross like that. And you're like, because they, when they put out the food pyramid and all this stuff about, eat a ton of cereal and bread and grains and rice and very little, butter and eggs and red meat.
Right.
And when they did that and we started eating that way, we all started getting fatter.
Yeah.
The average American got way bigger. And also heart disease deaths did not decline.
Right.
Right. So it's like, there's, if we stopped eating red meat and we all stopped getting heart disease and we all stopped being fat, it'd be like, hey, great, let's keep it up. But it's the exact opposite. Yeah,
exactly. And if you want to add a third graph in there, and if you look at the introduction of ultra processed foods, when did that happen? Right. It was around World War II, around the right after that time. Right. All the husbands are leaving. They're going to either war or they're going to the factory or whatever the case may be. So now the mom is left at home, right? And she's got to handle all the cooking and clean, whatever. So now we introduce things like TV dinners. We introduce things like, very quick meals and foods that we can eat very fast that are very, very processed. And that's kind of the tipping point of our ultra processed food consumption. And if you look at the graph of obesity rates and the graph of the prevalence of ultra processed foods in America, they're almost exactly the same growth rate. Like you mentioned, while eating things like butter, eating things like cream or red meat, egg yolks, those types of things are on the decline. While obesity is only on the upside. And again, I don't know how much of a conspiracy theory lover you are, but like you mentioned, the food pyramid.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? The government,
right?
And if you look on a lot of the government websites, like the things that they recommend from a dietary perspective are going to be completely flipped to actuality, right? Like a lot of grains, breads. Those types of things are going to be at the top of the list, whereas things like red meat, all those things you mentioned, are going to be at the bottom of the list. And unfortunately, I hold the opinion that the government is not too keen on you being a healthy
right. They want to keep you dependent on them, right? No, I'm totally conspiracy theory with you on that, right? It's in their benefit for you to, first of all, not be super healthy to overthrow them.
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
So they want to keep you kind of docile, sick, dependent,
very much easier to control.
Much easier. Yeah, there you go.
There's
And then also like some of those studies, the food pyramid one being probably the most famous, but a lot of those were done by Yorba Linda University. Did most of those studies, which is a Seventh-day Adventist school, which Seventh-day Adventists are vegetarians. So it was kind of all part of their religious dogma of Seventh-day Adventists are vegetarians, and they're the ones paying for this study, whose results are eat tons of grain, and hardly any meat.
Right, exactly.
Like, well, look at who paid for that study.
Exactly, and unfortunately, there's going to be very few studies or very few just information out there that is completely unbiased and doesn't have a secondary motivation involved with it. So, okay, if I'm looking at a study, there was one that came out recently talking about how M&Ms are healthier than eating red meat, right? And it's like, okay, well, who funded this? I think.
And the Oreo one, you see that the Oreo's lower cholesterol.
Yeah, exactly. So you just have to really look into that. Don't just read headlines, and please, please, please do not get your dietary advice from the government.
That's great. I feel like a big part of it, kind of going back to those hormonal signals of like when I feel full, when I feel satisfied. I think that's important too. Like if we kind of pay attention, and like I wasn't paying attention through my 20s and 30s to like how I felt. I was just kind of eating whatever I want and then trying to work out a ton. And now that, parts of me are breaking, knees and backs and elbow and shoulder, and I'm doing less and less and less. I'm like, okay, I can't just depend on big workouts to keep myself from gaining weight. I got to dial in this nutrition thing as I'm getting older. So now I'm starting to pay attention to like how foods make me feel. And like, oh, this food I never get full on. I could eat this food, I could eat thirds and fourths of this food. Whereas this food, one plateful, I'm good.
Yeah, and that's why I don't align super big with the mantra that, all calories are the same, or the only thing you should care about is calories in and calories out. And like from a very analytical equation standpoint, yes, the only way to lose weight is to be in a calorie deficit and to eat less than you burn. Like that is fact. However, again, from a practicality standpoint, and a lot of people who carry around that mantra, like I don't want to make a very broad statement here, but when you actually work with real people who have real lives, and their moms and their dads, and they have stressful jobs, and they have people who have lives, right? They can't be locked in a vacuum and just listen to your diet and be perfect every day. Like that's not reality. So if we're looking at it from a practical standpoint, yes, calories in versus calories out is important, but just like you mentioned, what is going to make it easier for me to maintain that on a sustainable long-term basis? And if I'm eating crappy foods, I may be in a calorie deficit, but my gut doesn't feel good. I feel all like just weird. And, I don't have a lot of brain clarity. I'm not motivated or energized to get up and go to the gym. Right. So it's not just about
your teeth are falling out.
Right.
Your skin, teeth, hair. There's a lot of other factors just besides, like you're saying, what the scale says.
Yeah. Or the
inflammation. Exactly. Mental clarity, all these things. It's like, you like that first example you gave of just eating like a dozen, protein bars. The first thing I thought of when you said that is you're going to be constipated.
Absolutely.
If you're just eating stuff that has a wrapper on it, like you're about to destroy your gut.
And again, like what are the impacts of that? It's not just purely that you feel bad, even though feeling bad is not, we don't want to go there, right? But what happens when you feel bad? You're not going to go into a gym if you don't feel good, right? You're not going to want to go home and do your stretching or do your foam rolling or do the things that you're not going to want to wake up early and attack the day. You're not going to want to do your nighttime routine before sleep. Like you're just unmotivated to do all of the other things that are going to make this more of a sustainable thing for you. So if you are only concerned about the scale or the amount of calories or those types of things, and everything else falls by the wayside, there's unfortunately going to be a wake up call very soon when you just don't feel good anymore. And then you're not going to want to do the other stuff anyways. So then you're back where you started to begin with. So you might as well just do things that are going to make you feel good from the start.
So this is one of the biggest correlations that I've noticed and been trying to work with guys that I'm coaching for their
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
So that connectedness and when you've got a guy with high anxiety, you've got a guy who's not going to show up very well in his marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So when our anxiety is high, we're not good listeners. We're not good communicators. We're snippy. We're short with people. And like when that happens, let's say because of our stress at work, for example, whatever happens to us, ratchets up our stress. Now we're not good communicators at home. So maybe our marriage isn't going great that week.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually when we tend to eat poorly and then also skip a workout and not sleep well. Like they're all connected.
Yeah.
In my mind, I have this ridiculous scene when I think about this in Jaws, where they've shot that spear into the shark and it's going and it's pulling all the barrels off the boat, like one barrel at a time. They're flying off the boat. It's like everything about us is connected, and when one thing starts to sink, it pulls the other areas with it. And I feel like for my life, when I think back to times where like I didn't eat well that day, let's say I just go through Burger King drive-through. Now I'm not going to feel like working out later. And then because I ate bad and I didn't work out, I'm probably going to make another unhealthy decision. Like it's all those barrels flying off the boat. Maybe I stay up too late watching TV. Now my sleep is off and I have some Oreos. And then the next day you feel so terrible, so bad that maybe you're arguing with your wife. You're not dating. You're not having sex. Everything's spiraling down. But at the same time, when you start to make one healthy decision, everything can spiral back up too. Like you eat one healthy breakfast to start a day. Now you feel like working out that afternoon. Then you want to ask your wife out on a date. Then, and then you want to go to bed early. So it kind of all goes up together. It all, spirals down and sinks together too.
No, I could not agree more. And just going back to something you mentioned in the beginning there is like when your anxiety is high or you have a stressful day at work or something else is going on and you want to eat, right? Everybody goes through that, right? It's like stressful, emotional eating, those types of things. And, that's definitely been something that I've dealt with and a lot of people that I've worked with have dealt with too. And one of the biggest things that I can say on that to help prevent just kind of the downstream effect of it is I like to have people just make a list of things that they can do. Because what we're searching for is just to feel better. We feel like crap. We're we're anxious. We don't feel good about ourselves, whatever. We just want to feel good. And that cookie or Oreo or whatever the case may be is going to make you feel good in the next 15 seconds, but as soon as that fades away, you're right back to where you were before, but we keep chasing that dopamine hit. So it could be, an unhealthy food. It could be scrolling through Instagram to get that dopamine hit or something just to make you feel better in the moment. So a more of a long-term practice to try to go for that can help with all the things that we've been talking about is trying to find things that are going to put you in that position of feeling better when you don't feel good, that don't involve eating terrible food or don't involve, go and taking your anger out in a negative way, whatever. Find a practice that is going to bring you back there. And I mean, there's no better practice than praying, going to church, calling a tribesman, something along those lines to just recenter you.
Yeah, there's healthy ways to self-medicate.
Yeah.
And there's unhealthy ways to self-medicate, right? And it's like, man, you could you come home, you've had a terrible day, and you feel bad, like you said, you feel bad, you want to stop feeling bad, and you kind of got these two options in front of you. You're like, well, I could get myself a bowl of ice cream and watch TV, to make myself feel better, or I can go to Men's Alliance tonight, which I totally don't feel like doing. Absolutely don't feel like working out or talking to anybody, but I also know in the back of my mind that if I go do that, I'm absolutely going to feel better in an hour. Like my drive home is going to be, I'm going to be amazing.
Yeah. You never regret doing that, right? You never leave Men's Alliance going, man, I really wish I didn't show up at that. Like that never happens. Or
Right.
a workout.
It's always hard to get there, but you're always glad you did.
Exactly. Anything that's beneficial for you, you're never regretful of doing it, but starting it is a little bit difficult. And I do want to make sure that people understand that, you shouldn't feel guilty or shame if you do happen to go for the bowl of ice cream, that day. And don't beat yourself up about it. Just understand and know what's going on. Okay. In that moment, I was stressed. Why was I stressed? This thing at work happened. Okay. Well, when I feel stressed, these are the things that I want to reach for. I want to reach for the ice cream, or I want to reach for this. And again, just become aware of those things. And it starts with the awareness around it. And then once you become aware of the habits or the things that you're more likely to do in those situations, then you can start to change them. On the flip side of that, there's a reason that gluttony is one of the deadly sins, because what we're doing is we're trying to fill a void with food.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to make ourselves feel better and fill this emptiness that we have with terrible food because it tastes great.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to what you mentioned earlier with the salt, the sugar, and that, there's a great book. I cannot remember the author, but it's called Salt, Sugar, Fat.
Mm.
And if you're interested in all of that rabbit hole, then go check it out. But again, there's a reason that gluttony is a sin, is because where we should be searching for God to give us that fulfillment, we're searching for something else, right? And it could be sex, money, pride, all of those other things, right? Food and overconsumption and a bad relationship with it is right there among them, because we're trying to use it, where we should be using God.
Oh man, so good. Dude, Coach, thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation. I know that our listeners have enjoyed it as much as I have. This has been great. And I got to ask you some questions to get free advice from you there, fixing my own metabolism. I also just, back to going to paying attention to how foods make you feel. Also paying attention to how different exercises make me feel, right? Like I hate running and I hate doing, sprints. I hate mountain climbers, man. Those things always make me want to puke. But there's other exercises that I love doing.
Yeah.
Like I love doing push-ups. I love doing sit-ups. I like to see how many flutter kicks I can do. So paying attention to like which ones do I like to do. My favorite exercise is rucking. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
You just walk. You just go for a walk with a bunch of heavy weight in a backpack.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Throw 50-pound, go to Lowe's or Home Depot and grab a 50-pound bag of playground sand.
Yep.
And it costs about $4.
Yeah.
$4. Put that in a backpack and go for a walk, and it's total body.
Yep.
It's shoulders, back, core, legs, and cardio. And you can talk.
Yeah.
It's social. You can get a group of guys to do it. But like just knowing like this workout makes me feel terrible. This workout makes me feel great. And as I get older, I'm less likely to push myself and make myself do the one I hate.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I love this one. Life's too short. I'm going to do this one.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes back to the consistency aspect that we were talking about.
That's right.
Consistency is key. It is the most important thing to your success long term. And finding the thing that you're going to be able to be consistent with on your worst day is the most important thing. And if you like rucking, go for it. Don't think that you have to do burpees, to reach where you want to go. You don't. And again, it doesn't have to be rucking. It could be, doing 3 sets of squats in your front yard. Like it doesn't matter, but something that you enjoy that's going to create that downstream effect that we're talking about is absolutely important.
Awesome. So guys, here's what we went over. Let me do this recap here. Sleep, get good sleep, think long-term. Don't do some sort of, try to do some 9G pull of a workout that you can't sustain. So sleep long-term, eggs, egg yolks, cholesterol, butter, eat things that come from the ground or animals, and listen to your body. And, one of the things I'm taking away is the stress effect of, ways we can screw up our diet that are going to affect our testosterone. So, by the way, I wanted to ask you this real quick. Do you have a recommended way for a guy to test his testosterone?
blood serum is is going to be the best thing to do there.
Is there like a website that you mail something off to? Or
I mean, to be honest with you, there's actually, so if you're in the area that we're in right now, and they might have these nationwide, I need to check on that. But there's actually a cool place that I like to send people for just real quick tests. It's called Any Lab Test Now, and it's not covered by insurance, so you do have to pay out of pocket, but it's generally fairly inexpensive. I think you can get a testosterone test for less than $100, so it's not absolutely crazy. And you can just go in, they'll take your blood, and you should have results back in the next couple of days. So,
very cool.
And you can do that for multiple factors. It doesn't have to just be testosterone. It could be cholesterol, thyroid, anything like that. And you can get a combination of those things as well. So really, really neat thing there. They have a lot of those. So
very cool. Yeah, I tested mine a couple years ago. I don't remember who I used. I used a website, and they mailed me a kit. I pricked a finger, put it in a thing, mailed it off, got my results. So I highly recommend guys do that. Get your stuff tested.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that goes along with that is going to be your cortisol levels too. You mentioned circadian health. We've been talking about stress. That's been a really big theme of this podcast too. So if you are interested in maybe where your stress levels lie, cortisol is going to be a good thing to get tested too. The best way to do that is going to be a 4-point saliva test. So they do test it with serum, but that is only the first one in the morning, where you want to have your cortisol tested 4 times throughout the day. And the best way to do that is actually with your saliva. So you can get those mailed to your home as well and get that checked out.
And this will tell you how stressed you are?
It'll be one measurement of that, probably the easiest way to tell. There's multiple ways or multiple factors that are going to go into that. DHEAS is probably another good one to get tested along with that. But again, if you just want to get the lowest hanging fruit going, then cortisol is going to be your best one. And that'll give you a general understanding of how your body, not only how stressed you are, but how your body is actually responding to that stress.
Awesome. And we're putting Coach's email address in the show notes here. Coach has been a sponsor of our podcast. You may have heard some ads for him. If you want to reach out to him, he is a trainer. That's what he does. So we'll put that information in the show notes as well. Coach, thanks for being on the show. And, hopefully we get this conversation going about, the whole person, and it's all connected. And, if we're not eating right, then we're not working out, we're not sleeping, then we're not showing up well as a dad. We don't have the energy to play with our kids, and we don't have the energy or the confidence to romance and date our wife. So all this is so important because it's all connected. So guys, reach out to Coach, check out what he's got to offer. Get yourself tested, cortisol. I'm going to go do that, and testosterone, and let's work on, not just guys who are unhealthy in all these areas, but try to show up and do a ton of burpees 30 minutes a week. Let's be men who are taking care of the entire spectrum of our health, spiritual, physical, and relationships as well. So again, this was awesome. Thanks, Coach. And we'll see you guys around the fire.
Thanks for listening to the Men's Alliance podcast. We hope to see you in one of our tribes or at one of our unforgettable weekend experiences. So join us at men'salliancetribe.com.